Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Real 1% podcast, where we change the narrative on the plagued veteran community in a good way, where we're talking transition and we're talking successes and failures. That way, we can lead clues for our battle buddies that may be in need of help or yet to transition out of the military. But today, we're joined with Kevin. He's actually still in active duty Army, USAREC. He's actually serving up at Tampa MEPS. That's where it all started for me. So it's come full circle, folks, in this episode. He joined the Army 2001, and he's set to retire in 2026. The cool thing about Kevin is he said he's been planning for his exit for years already. So he's ahead of the power curve. And he joined the Army Reserve in 2001, right after September 11th, and spent 8 years in the reserve with 2 deployments to Kosovo and Kuwait. He went AGR, folks, so you guys will have to listen in to how to get that dream assignment, and we'll have to ask Kevin if it really is as cushy and cool as it seems. He's the second person that's come on and with an AGR assignment. The first one was Dean. He got there 2009, has been recruiting ever since. Like I said, he's now a master sergeant at Tampa MEPS, working long hours, so it might not all be amazing, but you know what I mean? It's got to have some perks to it. He's been playing the long game and preparing for retirement by establishing his own brand in the digital marketing realm. He has a master's degree of mass communications from the University of Florida. Go Gators. You know, we got that in common. If you're the Seminoles, you might have to tune out. He also has been a guest speaker in Social Media Strategy Summit and the MIC Conference, which is the Military Influencer Conference back in Las Vegas in November. It will be in Atlanta this year, 2024. So also be on the lookout for that. He says, I didn't want to put this at the beginning because I think we might have had people click off. He said, he's only been in admin roles his whole career, and he jokingly refers to himself as the opposite of infantry, which is not always a bad thing. So, and he's also the president and the founder of the University of Florida Military Alumni Association. So, without further ado, Kevin, I appreciate you joining me on the show. How's your night going?
Hey, not too bad. Thank you for having me.
No problem, man. I appreciate you coming and spending a little bit of time with me after a busy day at MEPS. So,
Yeah.
um, you joined the military pretty much right after September 11th happened. Did that have anything to do with it, or was the military already on your horizon before that event happened?
I think it was on the peripherals, but I was actually a senior in high school when that happened. So this was literally the beginning. I was 17, right at the beginning of my senior year. Um, so it was definitely hugely impactful. A ton of people from my graduating class ended up joining the military. Um, I've always, when I was in high school, I was on the school paper, I was on the yearbook. So writing and kind of admin stuff was my background. So I kind of envisioned myself as a Joker from Full Metal Jacket. I was going to go be the Marine journalist. So I signed up to join the Marines. There's a little sign up list in the career center of my high school. And then the Army recruiter went ahead and snatched up that list and called me into the office. And the first question he had is, "Hey, why do you want to be a Marine?" Uh, so that was a funny, kind of having been a recruiter now, I can more appreciate the tactics. But at first, I was like, "What's this Army guy talking to me for? Like, I didn't sign up to talk to you." Um, but I ended up, I had visions of going into communications and journalism, which ultimately I didn't do. It took me 15 years later for me to circle back to communications, but we'll get there. So I ended up joining the Army Reserve as an administrative specialist, which, as you kind of mentioned, if there's a grid, a plane, the X and the Y axis, and the infantry was up in this corner, I would be down in the opposite corner. I always joke that part-time admin is about as far away from infantry as you can get. For me, it was, how can I best contribute? You know, the guy that was writing yearbook articles and running stuff on school paper probably isn't the guy you envision kicking indoors. Hey, it could be, but I figured I want to do something. It was one of those, like, I'm not going to sit on the sidelines. It may not be much, but I'm going to do more than the next guy who does nothing. That's kind of the mindset I went into it. Little did I know, it would become what it is now. My job, my initial plan was to just be an officer. I was gonna go to college, have the reserve, pay my college money, and then I'd be an officer and spend my career that way. And really, nothing worked out the way I planned it, which is usually the case for a lot of us. Didn't end up becoming an officer and didn't end up going full time till, like I said, about 8 years later. But the first couple years of my career, they were predominantly full time. So for a reservist, I graduated in '02, went to basic and job training. About 4 or 5 months later, I was deployed, gone for about 10 months, and then I was back for 8 and then deployed again. So you figure my first 2, 3 years in the reserve was predominantly full time, which was the case for a bunch of people. The only difference for me is I was in cush places like Kosovo and Kuwait, while everyone else was in quite less pleasant locations.
Yeah, but you're still over there with the fact of you probably didn't think you were going to get sent off that fast right away. I was going to ask you
hmm
where you were originally from.
I'm from Southern California. Grew up in Garden Grove, Anaheim area. So
Okay.
definitely wasn't a lot going on for me at the time. And as with I'm not a unique story in that I needed to get out of my parents' house as soon as humanly possible. Was not digging what was going on there, so I definitely needed a launch pad. And combined with the world events, with 9/11 happening, it was just it was almost, in my view, it was like, how could I not do this? I have to do
Right.
something. There's no way I could, this is the defining moment of my generation. We just come out of, the '90s, which is a relative period of, peace and ease. I mean, there was stuff going on, but just on a massive world scale, there wasn't anything to that point, that had really affected. And I think a lot of us understood that this was really a defining moment that was going to set the world stage for quite a long time.
Yeah, I was in seventh grade, man. I can still remember that. They turned the televisions on and they had like the towers falling, just, I mean, smoke everywhere, people running in controlled, not even controlled, uncontrolled
Mm.
chaos at that point. And what was going through your mind when you seen that in school? Like, and also take us through basic training for yourself. Like, what was something that, you remember to this day going through that might have been hard or it might have been funny, just a cool story from your time of basic training once you joined?
From starting off with 9/11 itself, I think it took a while to sink in what was happening. Especially being a teenager. Like you said, you were in the seventh grade. I was in the 12th grade. But even as a 17-year-old, it's you don't. It took really a while for it to like. I think more confusion. Because I
Yeah.
woke up early and saw it on the news, and I was like, "What is happening?" And I remember actually going into school early just so I could have other people to talk to, like, what the heck is going on? Like talking to teachers, like, this is crazy, and just try to be around friends and teachers, because you don't want to talk to your parents about crazy stuff going on. It's typical teenager stuff. I need to get out of here and talk to other people to figure out what's going on. Um,
Right.
but I was in, a delayed entry reserve doing my drill through the rest of my senior year. But um, basic training was pretty wild. There was actually one of my high school peers that joined, went through basic and job training with me. So that was pretty cool. Wasn't a buddy program thing. It just kind of ended up working out that way. Millie was her name. So that was really cool for me to go through training and have someone that, with this similar shared experience from the same town, from the same school, going through that transition in the military. So I feel really fortunate, that I had someone that I knew. So that was probably a big memorable part um, of the experience for me.
Okay. All right. Appreciate you sharing that. And fast forward not too many months later, several months later, not even a full year. Hey, we're going to Kosovo. Pack your
Yeah.
bags. What was going through your mind at that point?
I think it was more, again, more confusion. I was with the 176 Medical Group in Southern California. They actually, I know now, didn't know at the time, but they actually have been going to Kuwait or Kosovo, sorry, every 4 or 5 years consistently, before and since. So that's kind of
Okay.
like their spot. But at the time, we were rolling out about March of 2003. So piecing that timeline together, the invasion of Iraq was literally happening and imminent uh, as we were ramping up, as we were going to Mob Station and getting ready to go. So we were on standby for diversion. They're like, "Hey, we're going to Kosovo. This is what we planned for. This is what we're trained to do." But with everything else that's going on in the world, hey, stand by, subject to change. So we didn't get like the final green light go ahead that this is for sure where we're going until like a couple weeks out. It was very much like this is the plan tentatively. So
Right.
we were ready to go kind of wherever. It could have been could have been Kuwait, could have been Iraq, but we ended up rolling on, did a NATO mission. So that was the first kind of part of being in the reserve that has stuck with me. In that it's that whole jokes that we have about, oh, it's not a real deployment, like we didn't, I didn't do anything of consequence. The sibling rivalry discussion that we have is, we laugh about it, but over time, when you think about it, like some people would say, hey, I'm super lucky with Afghanistan and Iraq being the hot spots for me to go, to have deployed and have that experience, but to go to completely polar opposite places with a NATO mission in Kosovo, and then later, a mission in Kuwait, literally during the hottest times, during the invasion and during the surge. Um, that was, some people say fortunate, some people say I missed out. It really depends on your perspective. Every veteran is going to have a different take on that. I consider myself fortunate because I was able to do what I'm good at to support, the organization. That's kind of my take of seeing it. I'm using a skill set to support the Army, and
Yeah.
that's what worked out for me. And everyone has hot takes on. I have a
Sure.
deployment patch for, combat patch for Kuwait. Lots of people have hot takes on that.
Yeah.
But again,
Yeah.
in the end, I consider myself fortunate. I did what I joined the Army to do, which was to support operations, to deploy and support the military. That's, the fact that I got to deploy at all, much less twice. I'm grateful for the experiences. I'm happy that I did get that opportunity, because that was kind of the point of joining for me.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, if you talk to a Navy SEAL, they might say, "Oh man, you missed out." You
Hmm.
talk to somebody else that never went anywhere, they say, "Oh, you got lucky." Who knows? So
Yeah.
it's all up for debate at the end of the day. But you're here, you got all your limbs. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? You're in one piece. So yeah, I just be grateful. And like, I mean, what was going through people's minds when they said, you're going to Kosovo, but we might be going to Iraq? I feel like that caused more anxiety than anything for me. If you just told me I was going to Iraq, I mean, I went when I was like 18 years old. So
Yeah.
you are. I mean, you go to your duty section, say, hey, you pretty much got the same thing. Hey, welcome to the unit. We're going to Kosovo in
Hmm.
5 months, 4 months. Hey, we're going to Iraq. Are you ready to deploy? What are you going to tell them? No. I mean, that's what you signed up to do, essentially, right? So support and defend the country. What was the overall census of the unit once you heard you might be going to Iraq? Did anything change? Does anyone talk about it, or what was that
Uh,
like for you guys?
I think it was a mixed bag. We had we had some old timers who'd been around, who'd done various things, that had been around. And I remember, talking to people that had been to like Panama and, even like Desert Storm, or, like it was a kind of a mixed bag. Some people were like, all right, yeah, we'll like just roll with the punches. Some people were, mortified. But again, from for a headquarter unit for medical, I don't think anyone was necessarily scared. Like, oh, like they knew no matter where we're going, it's not like we're going to the front lines. Like
Right.
we're a headquarters echelon for medical units. Um, so I mean, realistically speaking, anyone who would have felt worried would probably be a little unjustified, just because I mean we know the nature of military deployments and echelons. Like certain units are not going to be as put in as dangerous situations than others. That's just the reality of the matter, and we're one of those units that wasn't necessarily on tap to be put in that position. So while there was some anxiety, I think it was more of just the fear of the unknown. Like, are we going? Are we not? Are we going here? Are we going there? But I think by and large, everyone, and anyone who was afraid was kind of assuaged by the old timers or kind of the people that knew better. There's like, look, no matter where we're going, we're functionally going to be doing the same thing.
That's true. One might just be a little bit hotter than the other,
Exactly.
essentially. So once you got done with Kosovo, how much turnaround time did you have to go to Kuwait? Did you guys already know you're in the pipeline to get going again, or is that something that just
Yeah.
fell upon you guys once the time came?
So I was a term not used much anymore. Are you familiar? You probably know, but you know the word cross leveling.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was one that it's a practice they don't use much anymore because it got a bad rap and it was just basically mixing and matching. But I was actually cross leveled. So I was
Okay.
cherry picked out of my unit in Southern California to backfill a vacancy for a mobilizing unit in Northern California. So it was completely out of the blue for me.
Okay.
It was I was actually enrolled in community college. I was, working on my degree. I did, I was like, all right, cool. Got Kosovo out of the way. Now back to the original mission. I'm going to go to school, do my 1 week in a month. Um, and then one day I literally get orders in the mail. Hey, you've been reassigned. Report to, Mare Island, Northern California. I'm like, where the heck is that? I'm like up by Oakland in the Bay Area. And I'm just like, I walked into my reserve unit, talked to the full-time personnel. I was like, what is happening? And it was very much a kind of like, well, it'd be like that sometimes. It was like,
Hey, come on! You got to go all the way to the other side of the state. Good luck.
oh yeah.
Pretty
And it
much.
wasn't like report. It was like you are called to active duty. Like you are
Oh,
rolling out. Like it wasn't like, oh hey, go check out what this reserve unit is up to. It's like no, you're going with them. Like pack your stuff, report. So it was
so for
very out of the blue for me. It was me and actually one other guy from my unit. We got they were just short admin people. They got to their final roster got put together. They were short a handful of people. So what the Army Reserve was doing at the time, especially through the mid 2000s, in the reserve, they were just cross leveling people. They basically took people randomly out of their current units and just reassigned them to mobilizing units, so that way everybody could deploy whole. It did its job. It wasn't it wasn't a popular cross leveling and stop loss were two of the big things of the mid 2000s
Apple,
that
yeah.
got a really bad rap. I never got stop loss as a reserve guy, but I got cross leveled. And basically, what had happened was that the bean counters or whoever was cutting orders wasn't tracking that had already been deployed, because there actually was a rule at the time where you're not supposed to deploy a reservist more than 24 months in a 5-year period.
Okay.
So when they cut me orders, it would have extended me past that time. And I was like, at that point, I'm just rolling with it. Okay, hey, it does what it's told. Let's do this. So it's on to the next adventure. But it was funny. I was at MOB site, so we're at Fort Lewis, Washington, and somebody came up. We were about to leave in like 2 weeks, and they're like, "Hey, you had mentioned that there might be something off with your orders. Turns out you're right, and these are invalid orders." So the only way that you can go with us is you have to basically sign a waiver saying you're fine with being deployed beyond the stabilization or the homesteading rules, whatever they had called it. And if you don't, we're just going to send you back home. And I'm like, I've already been here for 4 or 5 weeks. I've flew to Northern California, and then we all flew to Fort Lewis. I'd already we've already packed up all of our stuff. We're already ready to go. And then they dropped that on me. They're like, oh, well, you can go back home if you want. And we'll just, because we can't actually make you unless you volunteer at this point. I'm like, I'm already here. Like I'm
Yeah,
not,
for real.
like I've already dropped everything. Like I'm already here. Let's do this.
Yeah, you probably got out of school, had to get
Yeah.
rid of all that stuff because you're going on site on campus, and I guess you're
Yeah.
probably
And
looking
I
for
had
the
roommates,
money and everything else.
yeah, roommates had already sorted it out. Like, hey, sublet my room in the apartment. Had a couple buddies, so like everything was already coordinated, and at that point, I was excited to be part of. Again, same theme here, even a little bit part of the OIF mission. Having gone to Kosovo and came back and heard stories and talked to people about Iraq, Afghanistan. For me, it was again another opportunity. Hey, I'm an admin guy in a transportation headquarters. Like I'm not overtly, like I'm realistic. Once again, we're going to Kuwait. We're a headquarters unit. We're going to be at, down the street from Arif John. Like it's not necessarily something that, I'm not going to be kicking indoors down the road from Arif John and Kuwait at a naval port.
Yeah, so I mean that's fine. There's over 200 something jobs in the Army. Not everyone's doing that anyway. So I was a
Yeah,
cook, man. It is what it is. You know what I mean? We all
absolutely.
sign up for different reasons, and you do the
Yeah,
best you can in whatever job you
yeah,
have, and make the mission happen, dude. At the end
yeah.
of the day,
So it was,
if they
so
really
it was
if they really needed you to kick doors in, you'd be doing it because that's what we all trained to do at the beginning. So it is what it
absolutely.
is. So
Yeah. So when I
um,
was in Kuwait, they did make that offer because it was surge time, that 0405 time frame. We were running short on folks. They actually brought a major out of retirement to fill a captain spot because they were
damn,
so short on transportation for my unit. So the
wow.
reserve at that point was scraping the bottom of the barrel with when it comes to needing people to cycle through. Um, and we were surging at that point, so the army was having a difficult time overall. But they actually did come and make that offer. They're like, hey, we need volunteers to run gun truck missions up and down Iraq. And there was some soul searching for me, and like, hey, like this is it. This is what people have been talking about. This is finding bad guys. Like this is protecting our assets. Um, and I declined. I stayed behind, did my job, and I actually finished my associate's degree while I was in Kuwait, which is a weird, a weird thing to say, considering what everyone else was doing at the time. Um, but again, like we said, it wasn't, like I had to really question myself, like, hey, even if I want to go, do hula cool guy stuff, like is that even my personality? Am I cut out for this? Am I going to get in the way? Am I going to put myself in a situation? And again, there's hot takes on that. Like, hey, some people say, hey, that's cowardice. You should have done it. Some people say, hey, you made the right choice. You did what was right for yourself or for the unit. Everyone's going to have a hot take on that. Again, it depends on your perspective. For me, I'm just honored that I was able to be a part of the OIF side of things. So I got to do a NATO thing, I got to do an OIF thing. Never did make it to supporting the Afghanistan mission, but again, I got some unique experiences, and I did it a different way. You're not gonna see a guy like me getting a Bronze Star or Medal of Honor or anything. But I'm equally proud of my service. I supported in what I was good at the time. And it's
Yeah,
just a
like you said,
different perspective.
yeah, dude. It doesn't really matter what someone else says about your time. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
You take if you want to join the military and do what you want to do, so be it. But we're not going to judge anybody for what they're going to do at the end of the day. Um, I was going to ask you, how was it like when you first felt that Kuwait heat, even though you're from California, and then lead us up to the age, like, or actually, before I get to the AGR point,
Mhm.
two questions follow on, like, what gave you the foresight to like work on your college degree while you deployed? Because if I could go back and do it again, I would definitely take full advantage of all the tuition assistance. A lot of people make excuses and say there's not enough time, but we all
Mhm.
know that you'll make enough time if you want to do something bad enough. But taking full advantage of that TA every year and maxing out your college degrees before you get out the military only sets you up for better success to pursue higher education and get paid for that on the outside. So what gave you
Yeah.
that foresight? And then also, we'll just do that. Just do those two questions
Yeah.
first, real quick. I don't want to overload you.
Yeah, sure. So, again, going to college was the initial plan, for many years, even until I became a sergeant. The plan was still to become an officer. That was kind of the route. So backing up even to Kosovo, I did a semester of college. University of Maryland actually had an on-site. So one of the
Oh,
barracks was like converted to a classroom. So I had 12 semester hours of college while I was in Kosovo. So
okay.
I was doing it. But I worked in the talk both deployments. So for me, it was like I'm working 60 hours a week in an office sitting in front of a computer. And as we all know, like, I mean, anyone who's ever worked with S3 or any sort of operations, it's not as if stuff is happening all the time.
Right.
Especially when I was working, I was on swing shift, I was on night shift. You spend 60 hours a week sitting in an office staring at a computer with internet access, you're bound to have some free time. So
Yeah.
I was like, let me just maximize this. I have a unique opportunity to where, I'm in an air conditioned place with internet access, and I don't have to go to the MWR hut, to try to get on a computer. I'm gonna make the best of the opportunity. So it was, it took longer than usual, obviously, but I was just one of those keep plugging away, one class at a time, two class at a time. So to be able to say that I finished my first degree while I was in Kuwait, it's a neat thing to say. It's really, a lot of people can say that they were able to do that, but when you look at it logistically of what I was doing, it only made sense. It honestly would have been a waste if I hadn't have done that.
Well, you could have been watching. You could have got the VLC player up and watched
Yeah,
binge watch Prison
yeah,
Break or something like that. But yeah, you're right, man. A lot of people probably weren't doing what you were doing, especially at a younger age. I mean, once you get a little bit more skin in the game and you become an E5, E6, and you kind of figure out how things work. If you get on a deployment, you'll be like, oh, well, I got to maximize my. I'm gonna need this for a promotion. I'm gonna need this
hmm,
for that. You know what I mean? But
yeah,
no, good for you, man, for doing that and staying and sticking to it, because I feel like that's one thing that might be overlooked or overshadowed is just taking full advantage of that $4,000 if it's
yeah.
still the same a year and
Well,
tuition assistance. So
when
that's
also
great.
the flip side, remember I was a reservist, so I got to go back and get a job. So,
That's true. That's
so
true.
it wasn't even about the promotion. Like, yeah, promotion's cool in the army, but like 28 days a month, I got bills to pay.
Yeah, yeah. What did you do when you got back for that matter right there? What did you do for civilian employment?
So when I got back, that was a super interesting time. I actually became a unit administrator. I got turns out one of the hiring managers for the area, like a GS 11 or 12, like one of the top guys, was actually a sergeant major in my
Oh,
reserve unit. So when I got back from Kuwait, there was a vacancy, a GS5 kind of entry level vacancy, and because I was a 71 series, date myself, way back when
hmm.
42 alphas in the army were 71 series. That was the admin job. But they actually were like, hey, this is how you got to do your resume. You already have, two deployments under your belt doing admin work. This is basically entry level admin. So I got my foot in the door in the GS system. Was a GS5 kind of unit administrator tech, and then moved up to GS7, working as a unit administrator. So that was really cool. The reserve, having that associate's degree and having the experience in the reserve was able to get me a full-time government gig with benefits, which was super awesome, especially, being in my early 20s at that time. That was great. At that point, it was one of those, like, going back to school full time was not an option. As especially enough time had passed where I'm like, okay, like I'm not moving back in with my parents, so we'll keep doing the part time thing, and now it's get a big boy grown up job. Did that
Right.
for a bit, and then my reenlistment came up for the reserve, and they offered me 15 grand lump sum payment. Obviously
Okay.
pre-tax, but like, yo, stay in the reserve, 15 grand. I was like, bet. That's an easy decision maker. However, the catch was that because I was a military technician, government employee working for the reserve, they're like, oh, you can't get the bonus because being in the reserve is condition of your employment. And being young and wanting $15,000, I was like, I hereby tender my resignation.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
gonna get that money.
you're taking a lump sum. Yeah, you're taking that lump sum. So you
Yep.
did that. So you got the lump sum, I'm assuming, and
Yep.
you re-enlisted. So
Yep.
how did you end up getting? How did you first even hear about the AGR in itself, and
Yep.
then what did you do to make that happen in 2009?
Yep. So I actually did some contracting before the economy kind of took a dump in the in the late 2000s. I found myself again in some jobs that I really had no business being in. Even being like a GS5, GS7 with like an associate's in my early 20s. That was like, I was very lucky. Especially in retrospect, like that was a great position to be in. And it probably wasn't the most intelligent decision to leave that for a lump sum payment. Couldn't tell you where that money went to this day, but I actually got to work contract positions for NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory and the U.S. Air Force's Space and Missile Command, both in LA. So both little, 4-month gig. One I was filling in for a guy that was actually in the reserve going to WAFT. They needed a fill-in guy, but I had a clearance, and it was administrative security administration rules. So I basically worked in like fingerprinting, badging for NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab. But I got to do like new employee orientation, and I get to like show people around JPL. And I'm just like, what is happening? Like, again, I have no business being here with my education and experience level, but this is awesome. So I did that for like a year and a half, just taking like, at the time I was making like 25, $30 an hour. It was very much like, hey, you have a clearance, so you get premium premium pay, no benefits, but again, early mid 20s, I'm like, I don't care about benefits, give me the money.
Yeah,
And
for
then
real, dude.
when the economy started taking a dump and the contracting jobs started to become less abundant and easy to come by, I actually went back into the GS system and got another job as a unit administrator with a different unit. By then, the statute of limitations on being able to keep my bonus had passed, so I was happy to slide back into the GS system. And then finally, I was going to be an officer. I actually had my packet ready. I was a unit administrator of the unit. There was a battalion S1. I was going to come in and be a lieutenant in the reserve. When I dropped my OCS, it was actually a direct commission packet. So I dropped my direct commission packet. I was the E6 at the time, and the retention NCO was basically like, "Hey, guy, if you can drop your AGR packet too. It's the same. It's basically the same stuff as the OCS packet." And then USREC came calling, and they swindled me. they
What'd they
So
tell you?
I was very much like, hey, this sounds cool, but I want to be an officer. They're like, oh, you can be an officer later. You'll make E7. You'll make E7, which was true. You'll get BAH, which was true. And they're like, hey, you'll make way more than you make as a GS7, who's also a lieutenant in the reserve. And me, I'm like, hey, that checks out. Yeah, sure, I'll just be an officer later. I'll go do go do some years as a recruitant, come back to the reserve, be an officer. Everything will be awesome. And that's not how things work. Once you're in
Nah, not
USEREC,
usually.
you're in USEREC for life. Actually just in the last few years they've gotten better. They've started opening up opportunities. There are people in the AGR program that are able to like go warrant officer and become a commissioned officer. They're starting to really reform it, but not in time for me. It was a little too late for me to learn that lesson. I was very much like, yeah, get a quick promotion to E7 and some BAH money. So that was kind of my my intro, like many people who got told very nice things upon coming in, but it all worked out for me. Got
Where
to
did you end up going to recruit at?
so I ended up going. My first assignment was Portland, the outskirts of Portland, Oregon. And you want to
Mm.
talk some character building stuff? Try recruiting for the Army in the outskirts of Portland, Oregon. My first high school that they assigned me had anytime you went in to do a table setup. For those who aren't familiar with recruiting, recruiters go in, they literally set up a table in the hallway or in the cafeteria. We got all our swag and giveaways and flyers, and we try to talk to kids and make appointments for them to join the military. Um, at this particular school, every time we had a table set up, they had like this weird equal opportunity or equal access rule. So they would pass that information along to all the anti-military organizations, who would then proceed to come in and set up their table next to us. So every time I'm
Damn.
in a high school, there's me and the anti-military people, and sometimes they have better swag and printed materials than we do. I'm
Oh,
like,
you better believe it.
man. So
I mean,
yeah,
that's
one
high.
of my recruiters got spit on the light rail. Got that gentleman regretted their decision. Uh,
Damn.
but yeah, it was definitely a shell shock experience to my first 3 years in recruiting. But again, we're able to make it work. That's when I first started dipping into interest in social media and digital marketing, because at that time, '09, it was still relatively new.
Okay. So what did you find out once you started dipping and dabbling in the digital marketing aspect of it? Did you do it solely for military recruiting, or were you doing it to build your own brand, or a little bit of combination of both?
Oh no, it was strictly to try to, be a better recruiter. In that environment, it was very much like whatever edge that you can get, you definitely want to take it. And again, '09 social media as we know it was really roughly 5 years old. MySpace came up around '03, Facebook around '05. So it wasn't, there were people doing it, but it wasn't widespread. It was still very much like, I actually got told by my one of my first sergeants during that time to stop screwing around on the computer and get back on the phones. Um, Good
Damn.
thing I didn't listen, because it changed the trajectory of my career by not listening. And there's a great book called Rebel Talent that I recommend. Talks about it's a Harvard professor who did a bunch of case studies about people who kind of buck the system, who really are innovators, and how a common thread was, a little bit of a rebellious streak, a little bit of a willingness to push boundaries. It's one of my favorite books, but that was kind of I associate with that, because it was at the time there was no regulation or guidance or training or doctrine about how to prospect on the internet outside of just email mass blast, right? So it was very much like smile and dial. You have a red time, get on the phone for 2-3 hours, and don't stop until you make some appointments. And I was very much like, but there's this other thing that seems to be way more efficient. Um, but again, you can't tell people like, oh, I have a better way. Like, you have to have the data. And then it was after a few years in, I started getting into the analytics side, and I really got interested in the data to help my case. So it really wasn't about building a brand. It was, there's a better mousetrap. There's a more efficient way of doing things. And within a few years, I was helping build a brigade, a first ever brigade level program. So, quickly others and other leaders I had quickly caught on. And, around that time, by 2014, I was enrolling with University of Florida. And literally, I was learning stuff in class and applying it with Army recruiting like the next week. It was a real time transition, because this is, it was the Wild West. We were creating a program and ways of doing business that previously didn't exist, in terms of the infrastructure. Like, this is how we track our metrics. This is how we train on it. This is how we develop new reports. We were really setting the stage for the future evolutions of what USAREC eventually did adopt.
It sounds like Portland was a little bit more of a war zone than Kuwait and Kosovo, man. You're on the front lines, man, getting set up on, getting people spit on. Like, that's wild, man. I talked to Thomas. He was a Marine Corps master gunnery sergeant, and he was a recruiter as well. And he told me that the armpit of recruiting at the time, he was in California, and he said he was getting too comfortable, and he went to Denver, and I guess that was the armpit of Marine Corps recruiting. Would you say that Portland might have been the Army's armpit per se, or
No, I think
not really that low?
Talking to my peers, I think it's up there. I spent after Portland, I moved to Seattle Battalion. They have a similar. I think it's just the political climate there. There's a lot of overt, protest-minded type folks. But I think New England there's some areas in New England that could definitely give a run for the money in terms of really rough character building. Like, you got to hustle to make it. I moved to the Midwest, and I heard people, kind of complaining there, about how hard it was. And then immediately I was like, hey, like, you have no idea.
Not that bad. We should trade spots for a minute, and you go out to where I was at. But yeah.
Yeah.
So what prompted you to get into UF at the time when you took on that?
So they were the first major university to offer a mass communication program specializing in social media.
Okay.
And I had been putting all my eggs in the basket of social media and developing social media training at regional level, company level. I developed it in Seattle Battalion and eventually 6th Brigade for the entire West Coast and Pacific Rim. So I put all my eggs in that basket. I'm like, this is the one for me. Initially I was like, I could do an MBA, but I'm like, man, that's common. Lots of people have an MBA. So I kind of took a break. And then once I came across the UF program, I'm like, this is it. I have to do this program. But interestingly enough, I didn't actually qualify. When I finished my undergrad, I actually tanked my GPA by failing a class or two, retook the classes, but again, the average, isn't great. So I had to get some really good letters of recommendation, which worked out because I was actually doing a ton of social media stuff in Seattle Battalion and with 6th Brigade. So between my resume and letters of recommendations, UF let me in. As we know in the Army, there's an ETP for anything. Never take no at face value. You can get an exception to any rule. So I took that mentality into getting into UF. I was like, I know the website says I don't qualify to get in, but I'm going to figure out how to get into this school. And I was persistent and I got in. And then I shot myself in the foot by, not balancing my time. I actually got a C, and I didn't meet the GPA requirements, and I got kicked out after my first semester.
How did that make you feel at first?
Oh, I was that was about as like I had pulled out all the stops to get into a top tier school for the one program that was like the perfect fit, and I screwed it up. So once again, I was like, all right, now I really have to take it serious. Took some time off, waited for my next PCS when I was to be a station commander to run my own recruiting office. Got more letters of recommendation, wrote letters about how it was stupid and immature and it was entirely my fault. But for real now, please let me finish this program because this is all I want to do. I literally never applied to any other school. That was I was laser focused. This is the program that I need. And I got back in. And And then from then on, I did a 2-year sprint, start to finish, and graduated in 2017. So it was
What
definitely
was
some endurance and some
Nah, for
persistence.
real, man. And I was gonna say, and being persistent and just not giving up. I mean, a lot of people could turned away and said, "Man, I gotta see. I didn't cut it. I'm just gonna go somewhere else." But hey, props to you for staying on it and knowing exactly what you want to do and not taking no for an answer and not changing your path. So, I mean,
Yeah.
looking back on it now, what were some of the key takeaways after finishing the program and getting through? Were you happy with going back the second time and like believing that that was the program? Did it all turn out how you thought it was going
Oh
to
yeah,
be, or
I
better
loved
or
I
worse? Or
loved every single class, and again, it continued. I was able to help build new programs. The Army at that point was standing up a new, they called them virtual recruiting teams, VRTs. Was new. It was kind of an offshoot from what we had done a couple years earlier in 6th Brigade. Um, but I helped set up some new teams, and again, it was one of those. I'm literally able to implement this stuff as I'm doing it, so it helped me in my day job, and it also helped establish me as kind of a subject matter expert to get my name out there with with battalion commanders and CSMs. So it was really beneficial for me. It helped me make E8, which in the AGR world, that's a very tight pyramid. We're talking 2-3% average that go from 7 to 8. So
oh,
that
wow.
was something that was a glass ceiling that I didn't think I was going to be able to pass. And I think going to UF to get the knowledge that I did allowed me to hit the accomplishments that I got. And also, I think it helped strengthen my resume because that stands out. It's not just another degree. There's lots of great schools out there, but because it was very specialized, very niche, and from a well-recognized top-tier institution, I think that gave me a lot of credibility. It wasn't just some guy like, "Hey, I'm good at playing on the computer," or "Hey, I'm good at Facebook." It's like, no, this guy's got a legit graduate degree specializing in communication. So people were more apt to listen to me and to give me opportunities that I wouldn't have otherwise gotten had I not gone to UF.
What was one of the hardest things that you went through with your time there, looking back on it now?
I think it was just the pace and taking it seriously, like just being able to mature and really knuckle down and be like, this is like, this is not a diploma mill. This is a real top tier university that I have to take serious. I learned, and again, I learned that lesson the hard way the first time around.
Yeah.
Really, I think it was just absolute the pace, because I went in like, okay, I'm going to do this full time while I'm also working full time, and just that sprint, being able to make that sacrifice in my personal life and balancing. I think the overall experience was worth it because thankfully I loved all my classes, but it did not. It came at a price, but it was
Right.
one worth paying.
Yeah, I mean, plus you're a station commander, you said, plus you got a
Mhm.
family, plus you got your personal life, so it's a lot to balance. I mean, a master's degree is no joke and then especially a specialized one from University of Florida. Did you go all online, or were you around
Yep.
the area and you went in person? All
It
online?
was all online, which
Even
is well
harder then,
suited.
man. Yeah,
Yeah.
even harder though, right? I mean, you're not in front of anybody. You might have some recordings or a live session or something, but I feel like for me, I'm much better just going to class and saying, "Okay, this is what I'm here for." Online, it's like you're pretty much a little bit more on your own than you would be if you're in a class. So it just adds another variable to the equation to work against you, I think, in essence.
Oh yeah. But again, thankfully it all meshed super well, and it was all really applicable stuff that benefited, and it's all stuff that I've been able to use to help move USREC forward over the decade plus, almost coming on 15 years that I've been with the organization.
Absolutely, dude. Seriously. I mean, I'm sure that, I mean, everyone has a phone in their hand all day mostly. So I'm sure by
Hmm.
you bringing the analytics and not just saying, "Hey, this is the way Kevin wants to do it." No, look
Hmm.
at I got the data to prove it. That doesn't lie, right? The analytics don't lie, and we're learning that more than ever, whether it's YouTube or, hey,
Yeah,
it doesn't matter what I think is a good video or what anyone thinks is good. If the customer or the watchers don't think it's good, the numbers don't lie, right? Women lie, men
absolutely.
lie, numbers don't lie. So
Yeah, and that
yeah.
opportunity presented itself in a dark time for a lot of people. Ended up being the biggest opportunity that I've ever gotten. Is I got selected to be a first sergeant, which on the reserve side they do a slate, kind of like they do for sergeant majors, but because there's so few AGR first sergeant positions, you actually got to get selected and come out on a slate for first sergeant. But I reported to my company. Went to a medical recruiting company in April of 2020 to
Okay.
start my tour as a first sergeant. And if we piece those together, that was the first month of COVID lockdown.
Oh
So
my.
that threw the entire world, much less military recruiting, up on its tail. But for me, I happen to have a specialized background, and at that point had been building programs across USAREC for several years. So this was, while it was unfortunate for a lot of people, and it wasn't a great time, it actually was an opportunity for me to kind of show my stuff and really, take us off into left field and embrace the virtual strategy of things when there wasn't really an opportunity to do that. And again, we're, once again, we're developing new tools and tactics on the fly. We're training and we're embracing social media. Oh, one sec, I got to plug in. We're
You're good.
embracing social media in a way that hadn't been done before. Not because it was cool or not because it was something that that would be nifty to do, because we had no other option. Like
Right.
you can't set foot on a hospital or a college campus. So what else are we going to do? We have to embrace the digital side.
So
So
what were
that
you
was a
guys
cool
doing?
opportunity.
What did you guys end up doing? Did you do like more WebEx, webinars, Zoom meetings and stuff like that? Or what did you do to counteract that you're not coming here, you're not coming there. What are we gonna do to make sure our number, we're meeting the quota or exceeding the quota and getting this out to the public, I would say.
Yeah. Well, thankfully, some people see this as a curse. A lot of people in recruiting or some organizations, you want to take over places that are not doing well, so that way you can be the hero that brought them to prominence. I showed up, and Orlando was already #1 in the country in medical recruiting. So those are some big shoes to fill. And then throw the pandemic right on top of that. It's like, okay, you're taking over the #1 place, the #1 company in the country. Don't screw it up. And it's like,
Yeah, keep it that
ooh.
way. Keep it that way. Here's COVID as well.
Yeah. So fortunately, there was already a lot of really talented, really skilled people already in place. It's not like I was starting from scratch. We already knew what we were doing. So, again, I'm not going to take credit saying that virtual is what did it for us, but we stayed #1. They were #1 in 2019. I showed up in 20. We were #1 in 2020 and 2021. The first and only company in the history of Army medical recruiting to be #1 for 3 straight years. And we did it during COVID. Again, virtual wasn't the only thing; it was a factor, but I think it was more of creating the culture. We created a good culture of we can win it, and going back to back was a big thing. No one had ever gone 3 years in a row, and I think a big part of it was just creating that culture of believing that we were going to be the first. That we absolutely, without a doubt, were going to do it, and everyone bought in. We believed in it, and we worked towards that mission, and we did it. And I think we reinvented ourselves several times. We kept adapting. The way they were #1 in 2020 was not the way they got #1 in 2019, and the way we got our third year was not the way we did it either the other 2 years. It was just a constant focus to challenge ourselves to reinvent and adapt and adjust to the changing environment and changing conditions. but keeping our eye on the prize. So that's one of the things I'm most proud of is being able to, a lot of AGRs, a lot of people in general don't get the opportunity to wear the diamond and be a first sergeant. So to be able to do that at all was just such a privilege and honor. And then to be able to accomplish what we accomplished and set records and do things that had never been done before is just icing on the cake.
So you pretty much did what the Golden State Warriors couldn't do, man. You got that three-peat, man. You got it. You got that three-peat, man.
Yeah.
You got it. That's good, though, man. I mean, you got to feel good at accomplishing something like that because you're dealing with people that are top-tier recruiters all over the nation in the medical field, in the whole the field of recruiting to begin with. So, I mean, congratulations for that, and to your team for doing that. So, I mean, must have felt good, must have partied hard, had a good celebration with that. And
well, I think the biggest thing that comes more than just winning the trophies and stuff is seeing, like, a couple years ago, one of my top station commanders made master sergeant, and then the
Right.
V7 evaluation list came out yesterday. Another one of the recruiters that was there is getting selected. A lot of them are getting left with meritorious service medals. So to be able to use those accomplishments to fight for them, for their career progression, and seeing a lot of them come out and get promoted and go on to do good things, that's that feels even better than the three-peat itself, is seeing the after effects of how it's helped, all the folks that made it happen.
Yeah, and you guys should deserve it. You guys are putting in the sweat equity and the hard work to do it. So congratulations to you and everybody else for the promotions and the accolades. You guys deserve it. Wanted to ask you about you like we talked about earlier in the podcast. You're setting yourself up for success before leaving the military. You plan on leaving in 2026 until they say, "Hey, we got that officer packet ready." You got to do another 5 years. Maybe they'll keep you around a little bit longer, but if you don't stay longer and you do get out in 2 more years, I mean, you've already set yourself up. You're a marketing communications professor for the Hilltoppers, right? Or no, I'm sorry, the Mountaineers. My bad. West
Mountaineers.
Virginia. The Mountaineers. I don't know why Hilltoppers like Kentucky Bowling. I don't even know. I think that's Western Kentucky, something like that. But my bad about that. Talk to us about like that right there about even having the foresight of getting something like that on the back burner and taking into your the bag of tricks, just to set yourself up for success. Has it been something that you thought about doing from the beginning, or is it something that you sort of stumbled upon, and how are you liking it so far?
Oh, I absolutely love teaching. When I was coming out of being a first sergeant, that's when I really started. The last 6 months of being a first sergeant, I kind of knew the writing on the wall. Like, I know, like, okay, I'm not hanging out to chase nine. Like, in the tip of the pyramid, as we said, is very steep in the AGR world. For 79 Romeos, my MOS, the average promotion, let's see here, is about 1 to 2 a year. Make E9 for my MOS.
Wow.
So it's the truly elite. And looking at the trends, it was just one of those, being realistic with yourself. Like, it's probably not going to be me, and I don't want to spend the next 10 years chasing it. So I was like, okay, let's start thinking about what's next. So that was about 5 years out is when I really started to think, like, really came to that just coming at peace with myself. Like, I am super satisfied. I'm super proud of my service. I don't need to do anything more or go, like, I don't need that next level to feel fulfilled. Like, everything that I've done thus far, wearing a diamond, that was kind of the mountaintop for me. So that's when it was like, okay, now it's time to switch gears. And then that got me involved with the Alumni Association. With University of Florida, I actually got invited to help teach the Alumni Association clubs, like, hey, this is some strategies on social media. That led me to learn that they didn't have a military branch of their Alumni Association. So I spearheaded the charge to found that. And then I got some other speaking opportunities. I started being more proactive to really get my name out there and become more active on LinkedIn And it kind of just organically grew, as I got more involved and I saw the other opportunities. I continued to do stuff within the USREC bubble. I co-authored a great new regulation, virtual recruiting activities. So we have the first really truly modern doctrine in recruiting that talks about virtual strategy and social media management and all these things that I had been talking about for the last decade. So to see it actually be now published doctrine that's affecting how we teach and how we're moving forward with the modernization process, like that's that little booklet is another thing that I'm just supremely proud of. A lot of people don't get too excited about doctrine, but for me, that's one of the best things that I've ever seen. Seeing putting so much sweat equity and passion into this niche and seeing it actually hit the doctrine level was really fulfilling. But yeah, beyond that, once now the assignment I'm in now, I love USREC, but the career progression, working in operations, working at MEPS, isn't really super conducive to digital marketing or social media. It's a job, it's an important job that we got to do. But for me, it was about I needed to get professional fulfillment in what I'm passionate about. And as a first sergeant, I got to dabble in marketing and develop strategies and do training. And when I was a station commander, same thing. I got to do some marketing and training and develop. So I've always been able to do these side projects, but I didn't want to stagnate. I didn't want to just spend the last 4 years doing something that was completely irrelevant to what I was passionate about. And I still do a lot of training. I'm invited out. I actually did a conference with Army Reserve Careers Division, the retention folks. Went out to their virtual retention symposium and networked with them and gave a class on what we've done in USREC and our virtual marketing tactics and whatnot. So I'm still heavily involved on the side, but again, the day-to-day just isn't there for what I really want to do when I leave. And that's what led me to teaching. Every time I class, people had made offhand comments in my military training and when I do guest speaking, like, oh man, you seem really passionate about this. Like, you're a really good teacher about this, and that kind of got me thinking like, hey, maybe this is something that I should pursue. So I, was already making a concerted effort to be more active on LinkedIn. So I really just started looking at, like teaching opportunities. And at first, a lot of the ones I came across are like, oh, you need a PhD. Like we need a lot of college professors do have PhDs. And that's what I kept coming across. I'm like, oh, I can't apply for that, can't apply for that. And, same thing. It was just being persistent and really looking through. And then I saw West Virginia University had one, and they were really advertising for someone that had more practical experience, like industry experience, practical application of things. I'm like, hey, that's me. Like, I don't have a PhD, but I've been like doing real stuff. So West Virginia University actually has a partnership with DINFOS, the public affairs, schoolhouse for Department of Defense. So they actually give a discount, and they have like this partnership where anyone who has any previous DINFOS affiliation or training can go to West Virginia University as part of a cohort. And they need professors for that cohort. So it actually ended up being just a match made in heaven for me, because they needed someone with practical experience that was going to be able to work with, active duty military, veterans, people who understand the military language, but could still be able to teach the marketing side of things. And me, I went to school online. So again, everything, the stars aligned. And I interviewed well and was able to get hired, and it's been awesome. It's a learning experience for me. It challenges me and allows me to keep myself up to speed. So that way, again, I don't want to stagnate. I want to make sure that as I move towards my transition, it's not going to be, oh, I used to do some digital stuff, but for the last 4 years, I've been doing, administrative stuff. Like I've been doing, you know, the crunching numbers and, doing Excel files and uploading PDFs and whatnot. Like that doesn't sound like something that would set me apart. So regardless of my day job, regardless of everything else I'm doing, now I have this from a selfish level to build my resume and to keep myself relevant. So that way, when I do retire, I can say, "Hey, I've been, I'm a college marketing professor at the graduate level at a, recognizable university for the last 3-4 years." So having the foresight, but also I love it. It gives me that passionate outlet. I don't have to bore people at work rambling on about marketing stuff. I can save it for my students.
No, I don't think you're selfish though, man, because you're setting yourself up and your family up for success by figuring out what the next steps are even before you get out the door. And a lot of people I've talked to on the show, like I said before we went on the sort of like 5 minute chat we had, they don't they don't figure it. They don't even think about what's next. They think about, oh, I got to make that E9 list or I got to make that O5 list. And then when they get the harsh reality that they didn't make it, they just did 29 years in the service, and they haven't even spent any of those years thinking about what's next. And with any business, when you go into business, most people have to go, or smart business owners go in with the exit strategy already in mind. Hey, we're going to IPO. Hey, we're going to do this or do that. It should be the same thing for the military, and on a personal level, you should try to at
Yeah.
least have an idea, of what's going to happen after service, whether that's use the money for school. Okay, that's going to get you a little bit further out the door than not thinking you even want to use the GI Bill or the benefits that are given to you in that manner. But I mean, it seems like you've been doing it for a while, and I mean, props to you for doing that, because I don't think a lot of people think about it until the time gets in the crunch time. You know what I mean? The last two
Oh
minutes
yeah.
of the game or something like that. So, from
Yeah.
your
That's
point of
something I
view
teach.
and work, uh,
Sorry, quick note on LinkedIn is I've a lot of people view LinkedIn as kind of the last 6 to 12 months thing. Oh, you get a free year premium LinkedIn. I'll just activate it at the 12-month mark and figure it out. I advocate. I'm like,
right?
man, if you're an E5, LinkedIn has that recommendations and endorsements box, right? So I tell
Absolutely.
people if you're an E5 and you have a captain who's rating you, if they're on LinkedIn, get them to write a recommendation while you're fresh in their mind so they can write something that's great. Because in 10 years, guess what? They're going to retire before you. So that recommendation, that might be a recommendation from a general or a CEO or executive director of a nonprofit. You don't know what Captain Snuffy is going to be. They're going to
Right.
retire before you. You just know. So hedge your bets. Get everyone. Get all of your raters and senior raters. Your first sergeants, your captains, your sergeant majors, your colonels, to write you recommendations on LinkedIn, because you don't know who those people are going to be. And the value of the recommendation isn't really in what they say; it's who's saying it. It might not
That's
matter
true.
now. Nobody cares about, in the civilian side, might not care about what Colonel Snuffy had to say about you, but they'll care about what, oh, that CEO or that executive director or that C-suite guy or the guy that holds a really high level with Google or Amazon. You don't know where these people are going to end up. So you hedge your bets. You could build a living, breathing resume that's just chock full of endorsements and resume and recommendations. So by the time you retire, someone will look at your resume and like, holy crap, how do all of these top tier people know this guy? Like, and
No, you're
that's
right.
you're hedging your bets on who they're going to be, not on who you're going to be. So
Yeah.
building that network and relationship years and years ahead of time, even if you're not actively job searching, that's not the point. You're building your network and you're building your credibility, your brand. So
Yeah.
sorry, I didn't want to cut you off, but that's a
No,
that's a
you're
big thing
good. You're
about
good,
hitting
man.
LinkedIn early.
No, you're good. And LinkedIn you used to be able to renew it every year for veterans, but I guess they took that away because I try to go ahead and renew mine, and
Hmm.
it's saying you only get 1 year, and it's going off your email. So I guess that's changed, but even the price, I don't know what LinkedIn Premium is to pay, but I'm sure it's worth the bargain. You know, if you want to get in there and get in corporate America or get around the recruit, because a lot of people are active on LinkedIn. A lot of people respond to messages, posts, and you're right. Sometimes it's about your network, not really about what you know, or people get jobs that they might not be qualified for just because they know somebody. So who's to say that couldn't be you? It couldn't
Even
be
when I
you
was
one day.
younger, that's
That's
before
what I'm saying. So
LinkedIn.
there you go. You do the sergeant major, right? You do
Yeah,
the sergeant major on top of doing this, that, and the fourth. Everything
yeah,
lined up, and you got the chance. But I mean, that's just how it goes sometimes. So you got to get yourself in front of the right people, and you never know what could happen.
yeah,
I mean, I've used LinkedIn. I don't know if this is a right or wrong answer, but like he's going back to, depending on who you ask, you might get a different answer. I mean, when I was looking to go contracting, I would just find the people that are recruiters for the company, and guess what? Most of the time they'd either respond to you and help you, or they'd say, hold on, let me get you with a colleague to help you. Little to none would no one respond. But that's the worst case scenario, is either to say, sorry, we can't help you, or you're going to have a message that's left on red, and
yeah,
but that's life. So I mean, you gotta put in the equity, you gotta put the sweat equity
yeah,
and the time into trying to get what you find out what it is you want. Most people that get out of the military don't know exactly
yeah,
what they want. So if you don't know
yeah.
what you want, what are you gonna do?
Yeah,
What are you gonna do?
consider LinkedIn and like the speaking opportunities that I've been doing, like jumping, up. I've applied for speaking gigs. I've gotten accepted to a lot of them. The equivalency is this is the civilian equivalent of going to boards, right?
There you
You
go.
got to get your name out there. You got to put your name in front of people that make decisions, in front of people that down the road they're going to want you on their team. So people, again, people have hot takes on going to boards, but for better or worse, it builds your brand as a soldier or as a service member, whatever branch you're in. Going to those boards and competing and winning boards was a way to get equity in your name, for whether it be for promotion or for a better position or for a leadership opportunity, or for an award, right? So that's what LinkedIn is. That's what speaking engagement is. That's how I see all the things that I'm doing on the outside. Um, it's personal branding. It's
Right.
this is my way of winning a board. Every time I'm selected to be a speaker, that's the military equivalent. I've just won another board. I've gotten my name out there, and I'm putting my face and my brand in front of people who I might need down the road.
Absolutely. And I mean, even in the military, like you said, yes, you have the US Army or Navy or Air Force on one side of your uniform, but you have your last name on the other side. So you're always working for yourself to showcase build your brand, man. No, couldn't say it better myself. One thing I wanted to ask you, you're working at MEPS right now, but even in the even through your whole career, but especially now being a senior enlisted NCO, right? Is retirement something that's talked about? Not laying on the beach and
Mm,
drinking pina coladas, but like, hey, is your VA stuff straight? Hey, what's your plan after retirement? Because I'm sure you have a lot of colleagues that are around the same
mhm,
upper echelon as you and officers as well. Is that
yeah.
something that's talked about, or is everyone just worried about the mission at hand?
Mm, I'll plead the fifth on some, but there is
That's
it's a lot better than it was.
Okay,
There is a
fair.
lot more concerted effort. USREC is a unique animal. They're very mission focused, but I think over the years we have gotten a lot better. We are modernizing. We're getting a lot better at prioritizing and taking care of people. I know it doesn't necessarily have the best reputation in the Army, or probably across any branches. The recruiting force, can get a bad rap. But again, we're getting a lot better, and I think the awareness piece that Big Army is putting out there, and even pressure from Congress all the way through the Secretary of the Army. There's been so much effort. And there's also so many great resources out there. There's podcasts like this one. There's so many nonprofits out there. The Soldier for Life and all the equivalent transition programs are they're probably not where we want them to be yet, but the emphasis that has been put on them in recent years has definitely been great. And it's overwhelming how many great non-military partners there are out there. There's so many civilian organizations that are dedicated to veteran success. Like I said, podcasts like this, LinkedIn groups, Facebook groups. At some point, just like with they always say, you're more responsible for your own promotions than anyone else. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending, again, everyone has their take, but I think retirement's got to be the same way. There's
Yeah.
so many resources out there that you have to take some of the onus. It's got to be, you have to really be proactive and realize, just as I've been trying to. I'm a branding guy, like I'm a marketing guy. So for me, it's like, okay, I'm just applying these concepts that I use for organizations and applying it to myself. But you don't have to be a marketing guy to do a quick Google search or poke around on LinkedIn or Facebook and see, like, holy cow, like this is such a great community. There's so many great leaders of retired folks, veterans, people doing all these great things and putting out the word out there. And I see a lot of people that are having a lot smoother of transitions than what we have heard in the past. And there's a lot more really cool success stories, thanks to, again, podcasts like this and all the great organizations out there. But I do think, I would say you have to put in the effort on your own too. If you're waiting for the Army to do it for you, just like if you're waiting for the Army to tell you to put your promotion packet together, if you're waiting for the Army to tell you, hey, it's time to go to your next school, it's probably not going to work out as great for you. You gotta take the onus and be your own best advocate.
No, you're right. Absolutely right. I mean, the Army puts the information out there. All the services put the information out
Mm-hmm.
there, but it's really, you're like you said it the best. It's really up to the individual to do their own due diligence and figure out what it is you really want to do next, and just find people that have already transitioned out. I mean, I had a horrible transition, but I don't blame the Army. I don't blame anybody but myself, honestly. Did I think I had some bad leadership that didn't care? Sure. But at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day, they're not going to walk you out the door when you're gone and come checking up on you anyway. So it's really the
Mm-hmm.
person. You have to take, like Jocko Willink says, right? You got to take extreme ownership of everything that you do, and don't look to blame anybody else. Just take the ownership for it and blame yourself, and move on from it and learn. But like you said, you don't have to be a marketing major or or an analytics guy to Google, hey, fellowships for the military transitioning personnel. Get involved with a bridge program. Get
Mm-hmm.
involved with a community on LinkedIn. That way, when that time does come and you transition out, you're not going to formation at MEPS anymore. Oh, well, I still have these thousands people in the skill
Yeah.
bridge program that I could bounce my ideas off, and
Yeah.
surround yourself with like-minded individuals. And it doesn't even have
Yeah.
to be people that are in the military. Get around people that are like-minded,
Yeah.
and just follow suit. Don't wait for it to happen.
Oh yeah.
Do like Kevin's done his whole career. Be proactive. Don't be reactive, because
Yeah.
then you're gonna feel like your back's up against the wall. You don't have time to do the VA. You don't get it all done when you're in, and figure out
Yeah.
a little bit of
And
what you want to do next.
yeah, and I mean this with all due respect to anyone to anyone whose profile looks like this. But you're on LinkedIn, and this isn't meant to denigrate anyone. There's a lot of profiles out there that are talking about, here's my DA photo, my degree from Post University, and my bio talking about what a great leader I am. There's a lot of that, and it doesn't set you apart. Like, go
Right.
figuring out what you want to be when you grow up earlier allows you to go niche. It
Right.
allows you
Absolutely.
to really be more specific and start work. They say we got to civilianize. Uh, Civilianizing to be a generalist isn't necessarily going to be the best route either. So
That's
finding a
true.
niche to go in, finding something that you're passionate about or interested in or qualified for, whatever it is, there's no right way to go there. But copy pasting every other leadership quote and with the same DA photo and the same degree as everyone else. If you're at the end of your career, make the best of it. But for those that hopefully that see this or that can pass along the knowledge to younger service members, you got to have something to set yourself apart. If we don't want that's the other thing, is we don't want the civilian world to have a perception that every veteran is interchangeable. And we don't do ourselves any favors as a veteran community by all having the same LinkedIn profile, all talking about what great leaders we are with the same degrees from the same colleges. It
That's true.
helps fuel that perception when that is not reality. All of us have extraordinary experiences and passions, and we need to reflect that when we're building our individual brands.
Absolutely. If you want to be an entrepreneur, start while you're in. Start small. Just get some skin in the game, and or no matter what you want to do, even if you want to work for a Fortune 500 company, maybe you could start while you're
Mhm.
in and figure out how to make that transition a little bit easier because you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket when you leave, and that's not how it's supposed to pan out because then you're going to be back to square one trying to figure out what to do. But just trying to help. And I appreciate you coming on the show, sharing your experiences. I wanted to ask you what's next for you. Like when you get done, are you gonna try to maybe go become a professor full time? Are you gonna work on building your own brand or a combination of both, or sip pina coladas on the beach as well? What you gonna do?
I want to. So my the dream for me is to be fully remote, whatever
Okay.
that looks like. If I can get a nice GS public affairs job, I'd be cool with that. If I go corporate, I'd cool with that. Ultimately, I'm fortunate. My son's only 5. A lot of my peers have grown kids, right? I
Yeah,
have the
absolutely.
opportunity to retire when he's like 8. That's a decade that I could be there without all the moves. I could be at every sports game and every ceremony and every school event, and that's something that a lot of people don't get the opportunity to do, especially careerists. So for me,
Absolutely.
I'm prioritizing family. I want to leverage my experience to be remote. I think I'll keep teaching part time. You know, I'm open minded. I have a niche skill set when it comes to marketing and social media and all the things I've accomplished. And I think I'm building a name for myself. Like I said, getting that brand out there. I say that when you retire, to use a sports analogy, you're going to free agency, and you don't want to
Yeah.
be undrafted, right? I want
Uh,
to go into my free agency as a first round draft pick within for what I'm good at. And I'm open to all offers to see to see what that looks like, but I want to build my brand and equity to where I want to be sought after. I don't want to be I don't want to have to be chasing. uh, that's the best case scenario, and I want to be able to have the equity and value to say I want to work remote and to be able to hang out here in lovely Tampa Bay indefinitely and hang out with my son. Ultimately, that's what's most important to me at this point. But I want to do what I'm passionate about, which is this the marketing and social media side of the house. But I encourage everyone else, if the earlier you can figure out what's truly important, the easier it is, I think, to make the transition, because then you can go super niche and really establish your network and establish your brand for what you want it to be.
no, I don't blame you, man. I feel like that's respectable to say that you want to be around for your kid because we all know when you're in the military, man, you don't have that time. You just don't. I mean, you drop the kids off before at daycare, you go to PT, they're there all day, or go to school, and the day is gone and the years are gone, and the next thing you know, they're 18 and out the house. So I have a 7-year-old kid.
Hmm.
Been out the military, so I've been able to be here minus the contracting, but it's great, man. I mean, I think you'll probably love it. I don't think I think you will love it. There's nothing like being a present dad. There's
Hmm.
one thing to be a dad, that's a dad, but if you're there, that means a whole lot more. The years go by fast. I'm sure you could say the same thing. Your kid's
Yeah.
already 5, probably like went by in a flash. So
Yeah.
I, I mean, I look forward to us. I'm right down the road, man. I'm in Parish, so I'm like an hour
Oh
south of
yeah.
you. So we'll have to link up
Grab
in
some
person,
beers.
man, and grab some food or something like that. But yeah, I appreciate you coming on here today. Being vulnerable, sharing your expertise with us. One last question I got for you, and then I'll open it up if we forgot anything or we left anything out. What would be some key points or takeaways for someone that wanted to be involved in digital marketing, or even and how could someone enhance their own brand from the things that you've learned going through the all the training and the schooling that you've taken on yourself?
I think a big part is finding same thing in the military transition is finding people that you admire. Finding like for me, there's tons of influencers and marketing people that I've read their books. I follow their content on LinkedIn, and I like to a degree work to emulate and follow in their footsteps. And that's something that's really helped me, and I think that can work in any industry. If you really find people, like, hey, I could be that. That's who I want to be when I grow up. If I had a dream job, I want that person's job. Find those people, follow them, read their books, read their content that they post on LinkedIn. And that's a huge part of it, so that way you don't necessarily need to hyper specialize. It's better if you can, but you don't necessarily need to. And again, there's some books that are really good. There's a book called Trust Me, I'm Lying by Ryan Holiday. He's more known for his stoic works, and he's done some leadership stuff, but one of his earlier books was Trust Me, I'm Lying. It's entertaining, but it also gives you kind of an inside look at the underbelly of marketing and media.
Okay.
So it's kind of a fun read for people that aren't necessarily inside the marketing bubble and don't want to get super technical. And then some of the other books, I try to I'll read a lot of like innovation, business, leadership books, but just think about it from a marketing concept. But you can do that with any industry. When you
So
start
who
when you start reading, you can apply it and think about it from a lens of whatever your passion is.
That's true. So who are some of the people that you look up to?
So there's a business called Bootcamp Digital. That's super cool. Let me actually pulling up my little Rolodex. But I love their content. The owner is who I want to be. One of the people that I want to be when I grow up. As I always actually comment on her posts, and she's been super cool. We've had conversations, and definitely can recommend. Let me make sure I get the correct spelling of the name, so that way I can give her a plug. Um, Krista Neher, Neher. She's one of my absolute favorites. Posts a lot of great content. Has her own company called Bootcamp Digital. One that I really like. There's actually a colonel that I've been talking to that posts a lot of good content. She's kind of known as a fixer. Chris Salling. Colonel Salling is actually new to USERAC. She's come into USERAC to lead an innovation team and come up with some new ideas. Yeah, those are a few. There's a branding guy called Mark Omler, Omlor. He's more does like talks about like rebranding and logos and stuff like that. So again, there's just different people that I find really interesting, that I find value in. That's the other thing about LinkedIn that I can warn. There's a lot of influencers out there who aren't necessarily giving the best information,
That's true.
that have large followings. So not everyone with a large following is necessarily someone that is giving you the best intel or the best scoop on things. And again,
No, that's
true
true.
across all industries.
Absolutely. Some people just got that I don't know, they just talk a good game, but they're really not doing it themselves, or just
Yeah,
full of nothing to begin with. And
yeah.
like you said, that's
Chris,
everywhere.
Carlos Gill, that's the last one. He wrote a book called The End of Marketing. Um, Great book, great follow on social media, great marketing expert. Um, fellow wrestling fan. I'm a big pro wrestling guy. Carlos Gill is too. So little camaraderie there, but yeah, again, there's a lot, so many great people out there, but again, it's not limited to just marketing. But the other advice is see what even the companies you work for. Most of the companies you work for probably have strong presences as well. You don't even have to emulate individuals. You can emulate what companies are doing successfully on social media and marketing themselves and what they're doing on LinkedIn. Um, so just finding that inspiration.
Yeah, like you said, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Find people that are already doing it. Someone's probably already doing what you're trying to do, and
Hmm.
figure out what worked for them, and then figure out. It's like having a good NCO. You take what works, and then you leave the rest
Hmm.
behind. You know what I mean? Add it to your toolbox, and
Yeah.
and go with the flow. But I wanted to open it up to you, and if we left anything off, I mean, the ball's in your court now, and you could spit it out if you want. But I just appreciate having you on. Then we'll shut it down for the day.
No, absolutely. I enjoy this talk. I appreciate the opportunity to come on and support the podcast, and really appreciate what you're doing for the community and leading this. I wish there was. We definitely need to get the word out because we need things like this out there. Where people can learn from the experiences of others. And again, I'm just honored that you had me on and. Had put me in that level where I'm worth talking to. So feel it's pretty cool to be on and support such a thing and such a great cause. If anyone wants to connect with me, I'm on LinkedIn, Kevin Doe Croson. I'm the only one that spells it that way. It's a whole other story. It was a personal rebranding. Actually, me and my wife actually both changed our name when we got married. So
Okay.
Croson is our first generation, one of a kind name. So I took rebranding to the next level. My family got
Man,
rebranded.
you got the whole family rebranded, dude. There you go.
Yeah.
But
So
nah, man,
Crosyn, Crowsyn. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to chat and connect, and let's expand each other's networks.
yeah, let's do it. And I appreciate you coming on, sharing your stories. I look forward to meeting you in person. You just up the road from me, so we'll have to get off to Amateur Works or do something cool in Tampa. Always a nice spot to be.
Hmm.
I appreciate you sharing your expertise, and I hope we get to meet soon. If you guys made it this far on the podcast, hopefully you guys can like, comment, and subscribe. Let's hit the algorithm. Let's get this message pushed out. And let's change people's lives for the better. I mean, and if you're in the military space or if you're a veteran or a transitioning service member, you can hit me up at the real 1%1 at gmail.com, and you could come on and share your story because I mean, Kevin, you're good. Everyone's good enough. Doesn't matter what rank you are because we're all everyone, no matter, even if you're not a veteran, everyone's voice matters. Everyone's opinion, should have some type of weight held to it. As long as they're not some type of crazy extremist or something like that, that's a whole nother story. But as far as this goes right here, I mean, if you served in the military, man, your stories matter. Don't let anyone else tell you otherwise. It doesn't matter if you're on a foot top of a hill in Afghanistan or freezing in Kosovo. I mean, all of the
Hmm.
stories matter. What we're trying to do here is empower the veteran community, get away from the broken veteran stigma, get to a new place of, hey, man, veterans can overcome it all. They always talk about resiliency in the military, and you're going to need it when you get out because, yeah, sometimes the waters can be uncharted. But if you actually think about what you want outside of the military, the world is yours. Don't let anyone else tell you otherwise. I appreciate you guys listening in. And until next time, I hope you have a blessed rest of your evening. So take care.